Hey guys, it's Kevin in the Murphy guys, and as you guys know, this Thursday, the big movie and the only movie coming out this Thursday to start off 2018 is, of course, Insidious: The Last Key, and because of that film coming out, I figured that it would only make sense to review all three of the past Insidious films. I know I've already reviewed chapters 2 and 3 on this channel, but honestly, I'm not happy with how those reviews have turned out. I really do want to redo them, so I am going to review all of the Insidious films, starting off with the first one in this video, that of course being the 2011 horror film Insidious. And what Insidious is basically about is we center on the Lambert family, and everything seems to be going great for them until their son, their son Dalton, he ends up in this coma, and for whatever reason, he's not waking up, and at first they seem to think that it's the house that may be haunted, but once they end up leaving, they realize that there definitely is more to what's going on. This is definitely not a coincidence at all, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Insidious in general, I was definitely very much looking forward to rewatching this movie. I've seen this movie before, but I've never actually reviewed it for you guys. Actually, the first time I watched this movie was right before the second one. I remember I really wanted to see a second one, so literally right before the second one came out, I watched this one, and I was very excited to see, how this movie would in fact turn out. And on a rewatch, I watched it, and I have to say, on a rewatch, not only do I like this movie just as much, but it shows me exactly why this movie is so praised by everyone. Insidious really, I think, is a great example of what most horror movies nowadays should be. It has everything you could possibly want in a horror movie. It's very well realized, it's very scary, and it's definitely, like I said, one of the most well-constructed of its kind for sure. And there are a lot of factors that contribute to that, but we're just going to get into that, starting off with the cast. And easily that is one of the best things about this movie. The cast here, honestly, is phenomenal. I think everyone gives a fantastic performance. There isn't really one actor or actress that I can't say isn't at the top of their game, because honestly, everyone really does kill it. Let's first talk about Patrick Wilson in this film, who I think is perfectly casted as the character of Josh, and he's such an interesting character, because you can tell, we find out in the film that there's a lot that's gone on in his past that for some reason they just don't really remember. He doesn't really bring it up a lot, so there's always that going on. But you can tell he's genuinely very concerned with what's going on, especially once you realize how Josh is actually connected to this whole thing. It's very interesting. I think he definitely gives a very good performance here. I can't really say a ton about him because it does involve spoiler territory. Obviously, you guys know the spoilers for these movies, but if you guys have never seen Insidious, I am going to try to be careful when it comes to that stuff, so I think he definitely did a really great job here, though I definitely really did love his performance for sure, and any acclaim he's gotten is definitely very well deserved. And then Byrne as well, I thought also was very great here as the character of Renee. I thought she also was really great. This is really one of the first big performances for Byrne where people really saw how much of a star she was, and she absolutely kills it in this movie. She's one of the first to realize that there definitely is something going on. There's a constant sense of just fear and anxiety in her. She's very distressed throughout the movie, and she portrays it in a very well done manner, but you also are caring for in the beginning of the film because they very well set up how stressful she is and all the things she has to do as a mother, and I thought she just overall did a really great job here. I really did love her character, and their chemistry is some of the most well realized, I think, of any horror film I've seen this decade. It feels very natural. They feel like a normal married couple. There isn't really anything too special about them, and that's something I really do love. They don't feel artificial. It feels very natural in that way, and that's something I really enjoyed about this film for sure. Easily, though, the star of this movie, without a doubt, is Shaye as a character of Elise, who, at this point, I think has pretty much, basically solidified herself as a horror icon. She is just phenomenal in this movie. Yes, she comes in the film a little late in the game, but once she gets in there, she really just perfectly gets into this role. And sure, a lot of her role in this movie is kind of being a expositional mouthpiece. That is very much what she's doing, but there's so much emotion and so much passion poured into this performance. I mean, you can tell this is a woman who has basically seen it all. She's dealt with a lot of stuff when it comes to the supernatural before. She knows very much what's going on here. She is very well educated when it comes to this stuff, and she's very experienced here too. So I really did love her performance. I think she really did an incredible job in this movie. I really love what she had to do here, and she as well, like I said, was fantastic and easily, like I said, steals the show in these films for sure. And then everyone else who I thought also was really great. Ty Simpkins as their young son Dalton. Not an amazing performance, I will definitely say that, but he still does do a really great job for sure. There's a lot of stuff he has to do in this movie that definitely is hard for any actor to pull off, and he definitely does it very well. Barbra Hershey as well. She also was really great here. Also, I have to talk about them. Leigh Whannell and Angus Sampson are great in this movie. They provide a lot of comedic relief, and they're just a lot of fun to watch. They, very similar to Lynn Shaye, are paranormal investigators, but they're doing it less for, to help out the Lamberts and more for money or for other reasons, and they're just very fun characters to watch. I thought, honestly, everyone, like I said, did a really great job here. Everyone really does kill it in terms of acting, and that's something I absolutely love about this film for sure. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because I have to say, as much as I do love the acting, which, again, everyone really is phenomenal. There's not a single dud, I think, in the entire cast. I think what really contributes to this film's terrifying sort of nature is James Wan's directing, which is nothing short of perfection. I mean, it is as good as a film. I think it's some of his best direction to date. I mean, this and The Conjuring are probably his best direction, and it really is just because of how well realized this concept was. I mean, sure, we've seen stuff like this before. We'll get to that in the writing, but his, tone here is just so well realized. It starts off as just very calm and just this very, eerie sense to it. There's always this sense of tension. There's always this sense of suspense. The film really never stops moving in that way, but it feels very real, and that's something I really did love when it comes to the tone. It never feels like a movie. It feels very real. It feels very in the moment, and I thought his directing there was honestly really spot on. It's very eerie. There are some things that are just downright terrifying, and I think James Wann did an incredible job when it comes to directing for sure. There's a reason why he's known as one of the masters in horror, and a lot of people complain that the Saw franchise, that James Wann should never left, but honestly, if James Wann had not left that franchise, I don't think we would get movies as good as this. I don't think we get Insidious. I don't think the Conjuring series, I don't think those series would be where they are today, and I think it really is thanks to James Wann for crafting those films into, to the best of his ability. I think he really went all out. I think he really tried to craft the best, story possible, and I think he did an incredible job with that. Now, the writing here is not James Wann. It actually is Leigh Whannell, but I'm pretty sure James Wann did a lot, definitely, like I said, contributed a lot when it comes to the writing, and the writing here as well I very much do enjoy, because it is a very slow-moving narrative, especially for the first, like I'd say, hour or so. It's very slow. There's, there is obviously a lot going on, but there's a lot of stuff we're very much in the dark about. We don't really know what's everything that's happening, and there's a lot of stuff that we are very much unsure about. And I think that, like I said, was also very well realized. And one of the things I really love about this film is just how real it feels, especially when it comes to horror cliches. I mean, we all watch horror movies and we've said things like, they go into the creepy house, we're like, get out of that house, or close that door, or why would you do this? And those characters, they actually take those measures here. There is a scene in this movie where they do in fact leave the house, and it's like, holy shit, they're actually leaving. This is unprecedented. I mean, it does not feel like something you would do in a horror movie. It outright refuses to go in those cliches, and it just makes you feel like we're going to uncharted territory. It's doing things that horror movies usually don't do, and that's something I really loved about this film. It's just how real it does feel, and because of that, I think that really plays into how terrifying this film really is. I mean, this film is horrifying, and that mainly is due to the very well done story. And I also have to say the lore and the mythology, once we get into what's actually going on, it gets that much more interesting. And the connective tissue between all this, again, I don't really want to get too into it, but once we find out why this is happening to them and sort of the history of what's been going on, it gets very interesting. It really takes in this whole other direction, and I really love the way all that was set up. I thought that was so well handled here, and you know, even though I knew what was happening, it's one of those things where I've seen this movie, you know, before, and I knew some of the things that were going to happen. It still was very scary, and I think again that really just plays into how well this is written, how well the narrative is. I mean, there are no jump scares in this movie. Well, there are, but it's not in the sense where, oh, it's just, you know, it's just someone playing around. It's just a door closing. It's just a bird hitting the window. You know, that's not what this movie is doing. It doesn't do those jump scares. When there's a jump scare, it's legitimately, you know, something scary. It's not just a false scare. There actually is something at play, and I think that's really what works so well with this film. It just feels very real in that sense. You know something is going on, and you really don't know where this film is going to go because of, like I said, how much it refuses to go in those cliche directions. And I think it handled that very well here. So the writing, like I said, is honestly pretty spot on. Some of the best I've seen in any horror movie this decade, easily. Also, every character I think was very well written. I really did love the way the characters were done. If I did have to have one complaint with the film, is that I do think some of the characters are just a little bit underwritten. They're not bad necessarily, but they're not really given like a huge story to begin with. But there is stuff I think the film very well does set up in that regard. Like, for example, very early on in the film, there is a small mention about Josh's, you know, family history and how Renee doesn't really have any pictures and how they don't really talk about a lot. So this very well lets us know something is going on there. There's definitely, this is not something they're just telling us to tell us. It is actually something very important and detrimental to the story, and that's something I really did enjoy. I thought the way they kind of just drop these little hints and act like they're not a big deal for things that are a big deal, again, it really just plays into the realism of it all, and I really enjoyed the way that was handled. The cinematography here is some of the best in any horror movie I've ever seen. I mean, just everything about it is so well realized, especially once we get into the actual lore. You know, once we get to that climax and we get to the images, I mean, the imagery is great. All the effects, they are in fact practical. Nothing feels like an effect. These feel like actual creatures. You feel like you're in that house with them. Whatever is at play, you feel like you're right there, and I think that cinematography was just so well done. The choice to use practical effects is a great idea because, again, it plays into the realism of it all, and I really did love the cinematography. I know I keep repeating myself when it comes to realism, but that really is, I think, this movie's greatest strength is the idea of the realism. I think that really is one of the things that cements it as one of the best horror movies ever made, honestly. I think it really handles that very well here. The score as well, it's so creepy and eerie and suspenseful, and I just really do love the score here. Also, I've always loved the intro of the Insidious films. The way the title just like pops on screen, it's so like ear-piercingly loud. I mean, you just don't see enough of that in horror films, honestly. I mean, sure, we've had some great scores, but something like that, it's just so sudden and out of nowhere. I've always loved that. I've always loved that. It perfectly gets me into the films, and even if one of them isn't good, which, you know, Insidious The Last Key could end up being a bad film, as long as they do have that on screen, that's all I need to be like, all right, this is an Insidious film. It perfectly gets me back into the series, and I think they handled that perfectly here. I've always loved that. And of course, they wouldn't be Insidious without talking about that extremely creepy song that plays throughout the film, you know, the Tiptoe Through the Tulips, which was actually the intro of this video. And again, it's one of those things where I know it's going to come up and I know it's going to happen and I wait for anticipation, and it still does creep me out. I mean, the second you hear that, you know shit is going to go down. You know there's definitely something demonic at play, and it just perfectly puts you in the moment. It keeps you on that sense of tension, that sense of suspense that you feel. I just really love the way it's done. I think that really just plays into the tension of it all, and I think it's one of those things where it's, you know, basically one of the things in this series. Like, you can't have an Insidious movie without having that song in it, and I think it's just so iconic. And it's almost as if you were to have like a Jaws movie without the Jaws score. I mean, you need to have that score in there. You need to have Tiptoe Through the Tulips in an Insidious movie. You just kind of need it in there. It's part of the series. It's something that, you know, everyone hears it. They recognize it as the creepy theme from Insidious. Even if they don't know the title, they know at least it is from Insidious. And I think, again, that is one of the things that has made Insidious as iconic as it truly is. The editing as well here, I think, is fantastic. There's not a single scene for me that dragged. Every scene I was very much into. I also love, you know, how this film is done. Because like I said, the first half is particularly kind of slow. There's stuff going on, but you don't exactly know. Once we get more information, the film is, like, pretty much off to the races from there. It never stops moving. It keeps going and going. And the climax of this film, I know it gets a lot of hate, but honestly, I love the climax here. I think it's one of the best parts of the film, honestly. It's very confusing. Yes, it's very weird, and it goes in directions you don't expect to go into, but it never stops moving. It keeps you invested till the very end, and the more the film went on, the more I wanted to see, you know, where it was going to go from there. And I have to say, the way this film does end makes me so happy that I can just pop in Insidious Chapter 2. I remember when I first watched this film and I saw the cliffhanger, I'm like, damn, why can't I just see how that, you know, how that, pays off right now. Why can't I see that? Well, now I can, and it definitely makes me very happy that I can do that, and I think it was just very well done. Guys, Insidious is a fantastic horror movie. I think I've gushed about enough. I absolutely love this film. There are so many things, like I said, that contribute to being one of the best horror films of the entire decade. It deserves all the praise it's gotten. I pretty much love everything about it, besides those few small nitpicks I do have here and there. There really isn't too many other things I can complain about, honestly. It is an extremely well done film. It is definitely one of the most terrifying I've ever seen, and easily deserves, you know, all the praise, like I said, that it's gotten, and I'm absolutely going to give Insidious overall an A. So over, guys, my review of Insidious. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. Loved your thoughts in it. Definitely looking forward to reviewing Insidious Chapter 2 sometime later this week. Definitely going to do that. Let me know what your favorite Insidious film is, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.
With me.